Colleges and universities, both public and private, derive their funding from five major sources. One, government aid. Two, grants and contracts. Three, philanthropy, including on occasion funds from religious organizations. Four, auxiliary enterprises. And five, tuition and fees. However, the balances differs widely from institution to institution and from state to state. Of particular importance to anyone engaged in higher education is the understanding of essential sources of funding for universities: tuition and fees, federal economic aid, national subsidies, presents and grants, incomes and items of offerings, together with auxiliary businesses like housing and parking or athletics, grants and contracts, intellectual property licenses and royalty fees, revenues from fitness care services or veterinary clinics, and earnings from endowments. These are various sources of funding that institutions of higher education typically receive. I'm currently the director for career services and reentry for the College of Southern Nevada. We currently have about 36,000 students, and we have three major campuses. Apart from being the director, I'm also part of the interim financing committee at the college, and this allows me to view our budget. For this presentation, I would like to discuss the current current state of CSN financial current state of CSN. I would like to start with discussing how they're funded. They receive about $142 million from the state, and this mainly covers personnel services, operating, instruction, public services, academic support, student support, institutional support, and so on and so forth. Aside from that, CSN also receives funding from their foundation. However, we don't have that numbers yet because we've been without an executive director, so we don't know those numbers as of yet. However, I know from my department, the Career Services Department, we currently receive about $70,000 a year for just from the foundation as well. So that just tells you what the foundation and other forms of funding that they receive. From this funding, CSN receives funding from five major sources: government aid, grants and contracts, philanthropy, auxiliary enterprises, and tuition and fees. During the 2018-2019 fiscal year, CSN received about $145,281,815 from the state. For this presentation, I want to discuss or cover five things. And five questions are: the first question is the economic, political environment in which budget development occurs; the funding streams for higher education; 3, resource allocation and budget contingencies; 4, budget strategies; and 5, financial dilemmas. Currently, CSN receive the governing board that governs CSN is Nevada System Higher Education. They govern all of the state of Nevada. They have 5 institutions, and CSN follows under the umbrella. When decisions are made about the political environment of how much money they receive, the state of Nevada has a biennial our legislation meets biennium, so that's every 2 years. So every 2 years, CSN as an institution has to request money from the state, but that happens every year, because we are at a 2-year cycle. So when they do that, we submit our documents and all our budgets to Nevada System Higher Education, and our president and our VPs, they interact with the legislators as well as the senators, of the state senators and the state assemblymen and women, and they have dialogue about how much or what's needed and so on and so forth. So, and I know right now during the legislative session right now, we have a lot of our buses going up to Reno up north so they could testify on behalf of CSN. So this is how the political environment in which budget development occurs within CSN. Now, the second question I want to talk about is the funding streams for higher education. States and federal authorities have lengthy furnished good-sized funding for greater education, but adjustment in recent years have resulted in their contribution being greater equally than at the times of at least the preceding 2 decades. Historically, states have supplied a long wave and increased quantity of assistance for post-secondary education establishment and students, 65% more than the federal authorities on common from 1987 to 2012. Although their funding streams from higher education are now same to size in some overlapping policy goals, such as growing the admissions of the students and aiding research, federal and the government's channel resources into gadgets and inventory ways. Although the state and federal funding streams are similar in measurements and overlapping cover goals, it's hard for the state to cover all the needs of an institution of higher ed. So there are various funding streams higher education can go after. For one thing, the philanthropy, the division of philanthropy, well, our foundation, they want to partner with us, and so we would go after certain things that pertain to career services here at College of Southern Nevada, and then we would request that. So on a broader scale, out of our 12 schools that we have at College of Southern Nevada, we could go together and say from the academic side, we request a certain amount, or we want to do this endeavor, or we want to increase retention efforts, or we want to decrease retention, we want to increase graduation rate of minority students. We could ask private donors such as MGM or the casinos here in Las Vegas to request some funding to provide services for a certain population. So there are numerous, the institution of higher education gets majority of their money from the state. But post-recession, after the recession, institutions of higher education have been strapped. And so post-recession, a lot of institutions of higher education have tried to figure out or found other ways of revenues other than state and federal dollars. So they want to go after private funding. I know one of the initiatives we're doing at CSN is that we're going to target our alumni. We have over 400 alumni, and we're going to target them to see if they want to participate in any private endeavors here or endeavors that are pertaining to their business. Recently, we received $2.75 million from Ghetto HVAC, a local business in the Southwest, and they partnered with us to increase the minority students within the HVAC, and so that's another form of funding stream for institution of higher education. Now, the third question I want to talk about is resource allocation and budget contingencies. Institution of higher education. Basically, what this is saying, the resource reallocation is that when we have certain resources or certain budgets that we need, we have to reallocate our funding because a need is not being met. So here in the state of Nevada, as long as the funding is in a certain category, we can move money within the line item. And so one way of reallocation, resource allocation is that we could do that within our category. So, for instance, if we needed more money to cover, let's say, tuition or let's say bus passes for students, that we can move that money into that line item. So, as an institution in the state of Nevada, with our $145 million that we receive from the state, we could also do those reallocations of resources within that. And also, because post-recession, institution of higher education had to figure out how to work with less, and so we had to juggle resources. I understand. I remember being at CSN when during the recession we had to take furloughs, so to reduce some of the personnel cost to save the state. That's what we did. So we reallocated some of our resources. We shut down some buildings to save on energy. During the budget straps and everything, we have to allocate resources and things of that sort as well. For the purpose of understanding the differences between the concepts of budgets and allocation, one could say that the formal budget is the architecture or the basic plan per category on how money is being expended. Allocation, however, refers to the actual funneling of dollars to various units within the institution. In some instances, allocation flows will exactly mimic the expenditure category. The next question is budget strategies. Colleges and universities are under constant pressure to stay under budget. Here are several budget strategies. Scrutinize your procurement process. Another strategy is reduce energy consumption. Another strategy is keep students happy. Another one is monitor print and copy expenses. Those are some strategies that we could use within higher education to save funding. Financial dilemmas. First, there is a huge increase of cost of universities and starting to seriously turn off potential customers and alienate the public who supports colleges is warning. Second, the vast increase of federal student aid and also intrusion federal regulation has caused much of tuition price inflation and has reduced the distinctive advantage of American universities, their diversity, competitiveness, and freedom for central discretion. Third, much cheaper approaches to certify vocational competencies are on the horizon that offer an extensive threat to lower end of higher education markets. Fourth, the core fundamental feature of colleges, their roles an oasis where widely divergent ideas and discussed and peacefully argued. It is increasingly under attack. These are some dilemmas that that institution of higher education are dealing with right now. What we need to do is to figure out how alternative funding other from state funding. One, philanthropy, private dollars, partnerships with big businesses, and just finding alternative ways to ensure that at the end of the day, we keep our main goal of what we're doing here, students first. Thank you.